thank you very much for inviting me to say a few words. So I run a charity called Link Up UK. We work on overcoming divisions in society. We set up Belong, the first cohesion and integration network, and we're now working on a programme which is about how we get cross-sector partnerships, organisations to work together to create a greater impact on the ground. So I had three thoughts, and I'm afraid they're not very groundbreaking, about rekindling the community spirit. And it came about, I suppose, because we were trying to do something that looked at how we can actually create this greater sense of people wanting to work together in order to actually create something much more meaningful. So the first thought that came out was that when the pandemic hit, what came out was this most amazing example of community spirit in action every single day. Everyone wanted to do something, anything. In our local community group, in my area, anyone needing anything got flooded with offers, whether it was milk or bread or someone to walk the dog. There was almost like a competitive hub, who was going to get there first to offer the services. It was absolutely amazing, quite scary at times, but absolutely amazing. But what it showed was that people actually do want involvement, people want engagement. They wanted and took part in the community spirit that flowed all around us throughout the pandemic, or at least at the start of the pandemic. So we know that community spirit exists. The question remains how to rekindle it. And whilst a worldwide pandemic can hopefully not be replicated or repeated anytime soon, maybe the motivators can. Not fear or panic, but the desire to be part of something, to do something, to be part of a community. So a couple of thoughts on this. First of all, what is a community? I'm not going to go into that because it's a huge, huge issue. But I think we need to think about the fact that communities can be both inclusive and exclusive at the same time. We use it to talk about other communities, to lump people together into them and they. And we can use it to exclude, sometimes purposely, sometimes not, those who aren't part of our communities. But we're all part of many communities, our family communities, neighbourhood communities, school communities, our work communities and our faith communities. And no one of these communities can do it all on their own, nor should they, because they don't all have the skills and resources that exist in many other places. So we need to ensure that we are not excluding people from being part of this rekindling of community spirit. And secondly, there needs to be an impetus, a reason for people to come together. Community spirit comes about the best when it is rekindled around a specific issue. A local issue rarely affects just one community or part of the communities. It tends to affect and impact the whole community. So whether it's homelessness or an environmental issue or food poverty, it affects the whole area. And this can act as the strongest impetus for rekindling the spirit that we saw in the pandemic. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Uzair, and as Aisha mentioned, I'm from Bus Bubble UK, which is a youth action organisation which focuses on human rights issues across the UK and across the globe. Now, we're made up of 15 to 18-year-olds. There's no adults involved in our organisation. I myself am 17. Ella, you're also 17? Yeah, so the only adults that are involved in our organisation are advisors. So we're youth-led and we're made for youth. And I wanted to talk about the youth community and how we've sort of been trying to rekindle the youth community spirit and trying to get everyone engaged and involved with human rights issues. So what we found with this organization is that there's tons and tons of youth who really want to get involved with issues that they're passionate about. Human rights issues such as the Uyghur genocide, such as human rights abuses in Myanmar, homelessness in the UK. There's so many different issues that these young people are really, really passionate about, but the fact is that they don't have the platform to run campaigns or express their opinions and sort of have their voices heard on. So what we really wanted to do was to provide them with this platform and to provide them with an opportunity for this sort of youth activism community to come together and run campaigns. So one of the examples that I thought really illustrated the youth community was when we ran our Dilnas campaign last summer. And it basically meant that about the 80 ambassadors that we had at the time all came together and we all worked on this media campaign that ended up being featured on the BBC. And it was just really heartening and really exciting to see the youth community coming together and to be working on a cause that's, you know, that doesn't directly affect them, but at the same time they're really, really passionate about it. So my main thoughts on rekindling the community spirit is that we really need to be focusing on the youth and trying to get them involved and working from the ground up, because the youth might consist of, I don't know how much percent of the population today, but this is a really cheesy quote, but they're 100% of tomorrow, right? So yeah, that's pretty much it from me. I want to thank Dialogue Society for inviting us here and for allowing me to speak.
Space provides us with the opportunity to develop more spirituality, more reflection, more introspection. And I wanted to share with you, for my supper, what I'm currently working and thinking about. I know many of you, and Dialogue Society has been part of the journey which I was on from my early research on the Amman message and the importance of growing understanding about Islam in other parts of our global societies, through to working on social cohesion and community cohesion. But then I got really impatient. And I'm very pleased to see Phil here, because I'm also a trustee of Faith and Belief Forum, which is a hugely important part of social structure and social capital here in the UK. But I got impatient because dialogue takes so long to reach the conclusion or the desired end state that we want. So I began to look about 2 or 3 years ago at how we could look for agency to accelerate the process, not to diminish it or to dilute it, not to take away the importance of the dialogue, which the film and our young colleagues highlighted. But what could we do to accelerate the process? And I got really interested in leadership, in looking more at how leadership could catalyze and mobilize the forces for good that we know are released by effective dialogue. So instead of stopping and analyzing dialogue and the obstacles and the enablers, I started looking more at leadership. And my current research is looking at what I call adaptive actions. Looking at the power of recognizing that actually it's not the desired end state that always matters. It's not the destination that's necessarily critical. It's the way we journey that's important. And I came back very quickly to some of the early work of the Dialogue Society, which of course says just that it's the way we work together. It's the way we open our minds to learning while we're doing. And the work I'm doing on adaptive actions is looking at how we bring together two powerful forces that are important: evidence and action. So much of our work pushes for and promotes the notion of evidence-based decision-making, evidence-based leadership, evidence-based politics, and so forth. And that's important, but it's a necessary and not sufficient, I think, catechism for the sort of end state that we hope to aspire to. And I take an example from the pandemic. How often have we heard that we must follow the science? That's those who promote evidence-based decision-making, and really important it is. But if the science tells you that social distancing is critical to avoiding the worst impact and spread of the pandemic, how do we deal with those communities, those slums and landlord-tenanted places where congestion is impossible? How do we do that? Don't just think here, although it's seriously bad in many of our cities, think globally. The only way we can translate the evidence into action effectively is by learning and through dialogue, by asking the people in the densely populated tenements how we can implement the science that we have. And how often does that not happen? How often do the experts, myself included, come up with the evidence from research and then seek to impose it without the dialogue that unlocks the stronger learning and the stronger adaptation? So that's what I mean by adaptive action. If we're humble enough to realize that we need to learn as much as we need to do, then I think we can accelerate the process that we all seek.
Well, I'm not sure if it's good to go after Mike or before, and if I'd known one of my trustees was going to be here, I would have been more careful with my words maybe. But Ramadan Mubarak, and great to be here to break the fast today, and great to be here face to face with people again. It's been so long, and I suppose that's my first reflection, that you know, dialogue is about looking people in the eye, and real people rather than people on a screen. And although things have worked online, it's really great to be back. But what strange and unsettling times we're living in. It really is. And I share Mike's, you know, call for kind of reflection on those that we've lost and those who we continue to lose in wars and conflict around the world, not only Ukraine but Afghanistan, of course, other places, and of course the squeeze on the cost of living is going to kind of affect families here in a real way, and the policies like the levelling up agenda and so on that I think we need to engage with. But it's, and I was struck by the comments about the pandemic and the research that I know Belong have done into whether it's unified people or actually divided people. And I think that's open to question which of it is. But I do think, and here are a few maybe reflections for my dinner, but I do think that maybe COVID could be a circuit breaker in terms of providing an opportunity for people to unite, yes, around common issues perhaps. I think that's really important. I think there are a lot of issues to address, and in my organisation people are talking about mental health, people are talking about refugee and asylum seekers, people are talking about climate justice, racism and hate crime. Unfortunately, hate crime is still on the rise in this country. So there are a lot of issues to coalesce around, and I think that's really important. But maybe two things to leave you with, and maybe these are sorts of things I'm grappling with. One is I really salute the Dialogue Society and the notion of dialogue, and I think one of my favourite quotes is from the philosopher and physicist David Bohm, who said, "You need to be sure about your worldview to work from it, but not so sure you think it's the only answer." And I think there is a real kind of skill and way of looking at relationships that the Dialogue Society and others are trying to kind of reach for. And it's a challenge for all of us, particularly now when maybe in society we're becoming more polarised. But how do we create that space where we can suspend our own beliefs, our own kind of positions perhaps, and look for interests? And the final thing I'll say is that in the Faith and Belief Forum, we're kind of currently rethinking our strategy and maybe what we should be doing over the next few years. And one of the conclusions we're coming to is that dialogue platforms, and I think in our case, dialogue platforms are framed as interfaith platforms, but they're dialogue platforms. You know, they're spaces where people come together from different perhaps worldviews, different ways of looking at the world, and they enter into building relationships. So welcome. But I think the challenge for us is how to translate that work, sort of project it higher up to policymakers, to those who hold power, those who hold the power to be able to bring about bigger change. And so I think that's the challenge we're facing in our organisation, and I hope to be able to continue that conversation with a lot of you. But thank you very much for the opportunity to say a few words, and that's okay. Yeah, good luck to the Dialogue Society, and thank you very much.
So I was so salam alaikum, namaste, alam, salbona, and good evening. So I'm Rahina. I was a bit early and I was told I was talking, so I scribbled a few notes. And I think I want to start where you may have raised the question. when we were asked to speak. And I actually looked up the definition in the Oxford Dictionary of what is a community. And the definition was a group of people living in the same place or having a specific particular characteristic. And the second definition was the condition of sharing or having certain attitudes and interests in common. And I must admit I was quite repelled by that definition, because for me it signified a categorization and an othering of that definition. So for me, I much rather prefer looking at community not as in a community, but being in community, which for me connotes something very different. So I look for a definition of community to Martin Luther King when he talks about a beloved community. And a beloved community has 4 principles, which I won't go into here, and 25 characteristics. The few that touch me are ones that have been mentioned here today: compassion, humility, love in terms of agape. And I think if we want to build and rekindle community, then we turn what we conceive of as community on its head. And we look at it from the basis of love. If we want to really love someone in the agape form of which we build communities, then we have to see. We have to look deeply to see the other. And see the other not in terms of their characteristics, but in terms of their humanity. I mentioned earlier the South African greeting called Sawubona. Sawubona means I see you. And so when I see you not just who you are. I see where you come from. I see your ancestry. But fundamentally, I see humanity in you. I see the essence of life in you. And when you respond Sikona to me, you acknowledge the very same essence in me. So to see, when we walk, do we really see one another? So many of us are invisible, and that starts the foundation of our otherness. Can we really walk on the street and see one another? Because we don't. We walk on the street in our own little worlds, in our own little worries, without seeing. The second aspect of love, to develop love, has to come from looking, not just looking deeply, but listening, being able to hear. Seeing and hearing what the dialogue society is about is communication. But not communication the way we communicate, but a deeper essence to really see ourselves in the other, to recognize our humanity in the other. And when we can look deeply and see deeply, then we can have understanding. And the basis of love is understanding. We can only love when we understand. And when we can understand and love, then we recognize that actually societies built on love are just societies. We cannot have peaceful societies without justice, and we cannot have justice without love. So when we talk about societies, about just societies, about beloved communities, we're literally talking really about societies that are built from a sense not of equality, but of equity where we recognize we may be different, but we don't attach a notion of value of one thing or the other. So with that, I will say the concept really for me coming from South Africa, where we were involved in dialogue at the end of apartheid with the Truth and Reconciliation Committee, which I was fortunate to work with Bishop Tutu with, is fundamentally about a concept called Ubuntu. I am because you are. I am human. I cannot be human on my own. To be human is to be in community. So thank you very much. Salagashle, go well. And I'm really looking forward to being in community with you, to be in dialogue with you, to listen deeply and to hear your stories. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
So hello everybody, and it's lovely, absolutely wonderful to be here face to face at long last. And to think about what has happened in the past 2 years. So we have had polarization. We've had polarization around religion, certainly as a Muslim woman, and with the various conflicts that we've had and refugees coming into the UK, so for instance Afghanistan, and the questions and the discomfort that some people have had about those pictures or scenes that we saw on the TV, on the news, of people desperate to arrive in the UK, sometimes families being parted, being separated to arrive in the UK, and yet on the receiving end, discomfort. So I start with that because that's where I'm going to end. Why I'm going to end there is that certainly within Muslim communities there is a growing discomfort, let's say an intensifying discomfort. And of course I don't speak for every single Muslim, I speak for those that I have leadership of in Northeast Kent and in, Southeast London and North Kent, where the topic of conversation, whether it's ladies meeting for lunch or it's a Quran class, the conversation is about Islamophobia. Islamophobia that people are saying, this is too uncomfortable now. Why is it that Afghans are being offered hotel rooms, whereas Ukrainians are being offered homes? An opportunity to live in a home in a loving family. Why is that happening? It's difficult to respond to that. So my duty as the president of BIMA, founder of BIMA, somebody who walks towards prejudice. So even the conversations within my own community, and I appreciate your definition, Dr. Ahana, about it's not just about having a common belief, for instance, to call that community. But let's call it a micro community then, of Muslim women primarily, but some men as well, because I teach Quran to men as well, where that is the topic of conversation. They know that I am a kind of figurehead in advising the government and counterterrorism police on how they roll out the contest strategy, prevent and otherwise. And everybody is just talking about Islamophobia, and it's really difficult to rebut to that, because previously I would be saying, well, not exactly that, but insinuating that here I am, a Muslim woman in hijab, in leadership, in different guises. So that's a kind of countering that there is institutional Islamophobia. So really, in terms of rekindling the community, and I now mean the wider community, not just Muslims, thinking about the lessons that I've borrowed from Windrush. So I am heading up the consultation of how to bring those who've been impacted by the Windrush scandal, of course Commonwealth as well, and in that name in of itself is a problem because it's slightly exclusive, because people who are impacted by the immigration policies deemed to be immigrants rather than settlers were not necessarily people who came on the Windrush ship. They're people from the Commonwealth as well. So borrowing lessons from that, where, for instance, in that scenario, working with people of the Windrush generation, when I first met with them, the first few meetings were really difficult. Why? Because I was not seen as somebody from their community. So I was even asked, what do you know about being black and British? And I thought, this is just so bizarre. I was born here, I am black, and I am British. So where's this question coming from? And this goes to community, how other people see community. So I am not of their community, even though my maternal lineage actually came on the Windrush ship. So my mother, my grandparents, they actually came to the UK from Jamaica on the Windrush, and yet the Windrush Empire, and I was yet not seen as part of that community. So going to the how we see others in community and the labeling, and I think that mostly it was the way I speak and because I wear the hijab that I was excluded from the community, and even asked such things as, do you know what rice and peas are? Which clearly I do because I've been eating them since my childhood. And really what I want to just highlight finally is, in terms of rekindling the community, we need to walk towards prejudice. Because I have experienced prejudice, not from people who are necessarily not black, because I've just told you about prejudice from people who are of West Indian, a lot of them West Indian and African origin. I've also experienced prejudice from white English people who were very shocked that I can speak English. That has happened time and time again. I've experienced prejudice in the workplace where people have said, well, when's the solicitor arriving? That's me, I'm here, nobody's late, yeah? And so really I would just invite you to be brave, be bold, where you know there will be prejudice, because here we're all converted, we all want to talk to one another. But I encourage you to go forth into the spaces where you believe you're not necessarily going to be welcome. Now, I'm not asking you to walk into danger, but I'm asking you to walk into places that it would be unlikely, unexpected for you to be attending, and to go forth and be warm and invite those very same people into your space. Thank you.